Please go ahead. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to this third event of the day. I hope all of you are doing well. Inshallah, today's event will be, relatively speaking, short. So I'm expecting that I'm not going to take more than maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then maybe 5 or 10 minutes for if you have any questions or comments or so. I'll be happy to answer or listen to your comments. So we started, I think, 2 years ago or so, when Dr. Muhammad Bashamakh was the Dean of Academic Development. We started that series of activities that we called Learn a Skill in 30 Minutes. It was actually his idea. We gave several events last year. This year, I think for the past 12 months or so, I don't remember if we had any event similar to this or not, but this is going to be at least one of those events that we have planned, inshallah, for the next few months. Yeah? And the event today is called Using Matlab Live Script for Preparing Lecture Notes. I'm not sure if you have seen or if you have experienced that live script, Matlab Live Script or not, or if you know about it or not. So this is going to be more or less like, to educate you on this nice feature that I think in Matlab that probably not many of you have experienced. Now, all of you, I'm sure, have heard the saying that says a picture is worth 1,000 words. I'll go one step further. So I'll say that one picture is equal to 1,000 words. A video clip, or a video or show or so, you can think of it as something like 1,000 pictures. And then if you have a demo in the classroom, I'm talking about from the classroom perspective, if you show the students a demo, that's probably going to be something like showing them many video clips. And let's say on top of all of those, if you use interactive Matlab scripts in the classroom, I think it's going to be kind of the culmination of all of the, meaning giving the students the best type or the best form of educational experience in the classroom. And this is basically one of the motivations why I'm giving this lecture note or this presentation. I'm hoping that maybe I'll convince you to be able to use Matlab Live Script or Matlab Live Editor to develop something for the students in the classroom or outside. Now, I'm sure that you know that the educational process started many centuries ago, and started very simple with this is in fact a picture from Al-Katatib, which were used a long time ago for teaching, young kids Quran and Hadith and so on. Yeah? And then it advanced to the traditional classroom with a blackboard in the front or a green board. And then we had the overhead projector. Then we had the multimedia projector. And then nowadays, I'm sure that you notice that students, in fact, have their laptops or iPads while you're teaching. So nowadays, if you keep teaching students with the same mentality of 50 years ago, I think students will basically rate you very low in their evaluation, or even, they will basically think that you're living in the Stone Age. So clearly, you have to do everything that you can nowadays to capture the attention of students. You know that the attention span of a typical student or so is about 10 minutes. So unless you show the students something that is kind of fun during the classroom, many of them will go to sleep. Let me just tell you where I'm coming from or how I learned about this interactive live script. About maybe 15 years ago or so, I thought, let me start developing lecture notes for my courses, for the courses that I teach. So I started almost every time I teach a course, I develop lecture notes for that course. Not the first time I teach it, but after 2 or 3 times. Okay, the lecture notes that I develop, I'm sure that a lot of you develop lecture notes, but the lecture notes that I develop are generally different from the traditional lecture notes. I don't develop them on PowerPoint, but in fact, I use Microsoft Word. So I develop the lecture notes in the form of a textbook. I use Microsoft Word. The lecture notes read more like a textbook. So at the end, the students have something like not short copy of the book, but lecture notes that are written in the form of a textbook, more or less. Right? They contain professionally developed graphics, and I'll show you an example of this. Professionally developed graphics. I use graphical tools to develop those lecture notes. I usually write them in very simple English. I cannot even, use complicated English because it's above my level. Okay? And I always pack those lecture notes with examples and exercises that are professionally solved and typed. And I almost always focus on the course material. A textbook usually has some material that you may skip or you may not focus on, in addition to material that you may cover from some other books. So the lecture notes basically focus on the course material exactly, more or less. Okay? And I keep updating them each time I teach the course. And I never developed lecture notes except for the exception that I'm going to talk about now. Okay? I never developed them from the first time. Usually I develop them after teaching the course for 2 or 3 times when I've understood the material very well. Okay? And roughly speaking, my lecture notes go from 100 to 150 pages in length, and they take a lot of time. And you may think that I'm crazy, and I wouldn't disagree with you. They sometimes take from 100 to 200 hours of work. And usually, I spend that time. I got used to developing lecture notes to the point that sometimes I enjoy developing the lecture notes, honestly. A few years ago, I started asking students, I developed lecture notes for a while and never bothered to ask the students, are they benefiting from them or not? And I think 4 or 5 years ago, I started asking students at the end of the course, 2 questions. Number one is, who's reading the lecture notes? And to my surprise, when I asked the first time, I think 4 or 5 years ago, almost every student told me, yes, we read the lecture notes. Yeah. And I asked them another question. Had the lecture notes not been available, would you have read the book? And almost all of them said no. So basically, students understand that, the book is quite long. It contains a lot of material that sometimes it goes into detailed explanation and so on. So many of the students, they try to find the shortest route, let's say, to getting the material. So I think the lecture notes basically serve them very well. Now, you may argue that by doing this, I'm preventing the students from reading the book. But honestly, I found that, especially for undergraduate students, if you have good lecture notes, you are giving the students the best experience, or let's say you're basically telling the students, or you're giving the students everything that you want in a concise and condensed form. And many of them would not read the book if you didn't give them lecture notes. So I think this is something that is the best of the 2 worlds. So I found, the courses that I usually teach, I teach communication courses and signal processing in the E department. Most of the courses that I teach are mathematical in nature. They have a lot of mathematical formula and so on. And many of the concepts can be explained very well in a graphical form, whether you're talking about 2D graphs, 3D graphs, signal plots, and so on. So Matlab is really a good tool to illustrate many of the concepts in many of the courses. So I found that whenever I develop a course or develop the lecture notes for a course, whenever possible, I would go and develop Matlab code to help me in explaining the different concepts. And usually I use those Matlab codes in 2 ways. Number one is I use those codes in the classroom in the form of demos. And I always, whenever I give a demo using Matlab, I always notice that the students who were kind of half sleeping or even completely sleeping, they just wake up. Why? Because students love to see demos because it explains to them the concepts in a much better way than just talk and giving them equations. And I also got into the habit of including those Matlab codes in the lecture notes so that if students want to experiment with them or want to try them, they're available. This semester, I'm teaching, or this coming semester in 2 or 3 days, I'll be teaching a course which is EE571, which is called Digital Communication 1. And it's a very highly mathematical course. It has a lot of derivations, a lot of equations, and so on. And a lot of the concepts, as I mentioned, are graphical. So I started developing the lecture notes on Microsoft Word, and then it came to my mind, well, let me find a better way of doing it. And immediately came the idea of using the Matlab live script came to my mind. I've never used it at that time. So I thought, let me try it and see if it makes sense. I'll start using it. Okay? So this is basically what made me think of Matlab live script. I'm trying to develop the lecture notes for that course for, let's say, all of the lecture notes on MATLAB live script. But clearly, if you're going to be developing something for your students, you don't have to do what I'm doing. It's already taken me, at least I'll say, 100 hours or maybe more for developing the material that I've already developed, which is only about 50% of the course. So it will take me probably over the course of the semester, it will take me maybe another 100 hours or so of work. I'm sure that a lot of you don't have the time or don't have the will to do this, but at least if you can develop specific concepts, let's say, using this, I think it will be very useful for your students. And maybe you can target specific concepts that are difficult to explain without using tools like that. Okay? Now, many of you probably have used MATLAB. If you open MATLAB and you wanted to write code for execution, you'll probably either click on the new script, the thing that I highlighted there, or click on the new there, and under the new, you'll find many items there. One of them is the script. Okay? The live script is, in fact, the second icon that you have there. Okay, it's the second icon, which is highlighted and written here, or you can access it also using the new. If you click on the new, you'll see one of the items there says live script. So it's already there, but probably many of you have not tried it or never bothered, let's say, to learn what it is all about. So when you click on the new live script, this is basically what you're going to see. You're going to see an editor, which is basically, think of it as a Word document, but it has additional features where you can insert MATLAB code in the Word document. It's not as powerful as Word, so you cannot format your text just like you do with Word. You can do some formatting, but it's not as powerful as Word. But it's powerful in the fact that you can add whatever text you want. You can add the graphics, you can add links, you can add a lot of things. In addition to you can add code, and you can execute the code and see the results right away. And I'll show you some examples of that. Yeah. So if you look at, let me just minimize this. If you see the live editor, you look at, let me just turn on the pointer. Okay. On top there, you can do basically three types of things. You can either work with text, and this is basically you can add text and you can format it, or you can add code and add specific features to the code. Okay? Or you can determine how you execute the different parts of the code that you have. Okay, so those are the three. Maybe you can classify the different items that you have there in the live editor into three groups: things that work with the text, things that work with code, and then things that will allow you to determine how the code is executed and how the results are displayed. This basically explains the different items that I've talked about, how you can add text and what can you do with the formatting of text. You can, for example, use bold, italics, underline. You can add numbered lists or bulleted lists. You can put things in center. You can put things in on the left. You can change you can add headings with a title or different levels of headings and so on. And you can, in the text, you can insert images, you can insert hyperlinks, as well as, I think, and this is a very important feature, you can also insert equations. And equations in the live editor, you can insert them in one of two ways, either using the LaTeX editor that comes with built-in, or you can insert them in a very simple way, just like they're part of the text. And I'll show you this if you're interested in. And I'll show you, it basically provides you with lecture notes that are quite, they look more or less similar to a textbook with detailed equations and so on. So the results become very professionally styled. When it comes to code, as I mentioned, you can add code, you can control the code, you can add even some items into the code that makes it interactive, meaning that you in the classroom, if you're using this to teach, you can just with a slider, you can change some parameters of the code, or if you decide to give this to the students will also be able to experiment with the code that you have put. They can experiment with it, they can try different scenarios and so on. Okay, so I've almost talked about this. Okay. And then the last thing is you can determine how the results are displayed in your lecture note. Okay, There are three types of displaying the results. You can either display the results on the right-hand side, or you can display the results in line with the same text that you have written. And one option also allows you to hide the code. For example, if you're going to be giving the lecture notes, for example, to students to experiment with, they may not be interested in the code itself. So the code can be hidden. It can always be accessed by the student, but it's hidden out of sight, meaning that you see only the text that you have written with the equations, as well as the results of the code that you have included in the live script. Okay. The biggest drawback of using this, and sadly I have to say this, is it doesn't have a spelling checker. And I'm one of those who are really bad in spelling, meaning that if I write 10 words, at least one or two of them are going to be incorrect, will have incorrect spelling. Okay? So the technique that I have got used to now to solve this is I would prepare all of the lecture notes in the Matlab live script format. And then at the end, I'll copy all of the text to Word, identify which words are incorrect in terms of spelling, and then go to Matlab, to the live script, I find where are those words and correct the spelling. I know that it's not a perfect way of doing it, but at least I found work around this problem. And I hope that maybe in the future, maybe they'll add a spelling checker to this live editor to improve the quality of the text that is written in it. Okay. So what I'll do now is I'll show you a demo of how this works, and hopefully you'll see how powerful it is and how useful it is. So you see my screen now, right? You see Matlab, gentlemen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is basically the standard Matlab. I just ran Matlab. It's already running there. Oh, by the way, let me show you the lecture notes that I usually developed. This is those are the lecture notes for EE315, which is probability and random processes. Okay. And if you notice, the number of pages in here is, I think, 100 and let me just move this aside. Yeah, it's well, it's 200 now. I think something is I think the well, in fact, it's about 200 pages. Okay, and with detailed graphics and so on. And examples, and so I put a lot of effort into developing the lecture notes. Okay, and I keep adding whenever necessary. I'll keep adding, sometimes parts or sections in here and there to just improve the lecture notes as I go. So now let me just open for you, or let me just show you how you can start, for example, developing live script. Okay, so as I mentioned, all you have to do is just either click on the new in here live script, or you can just click on the new there, and one of the items there says live script. So let me just click on this, and this basically now I'm opening the. Let me just move this aside so that it doesn't bother me. Okay. So this is basically the live edit. This is the Matlab live editor, and it is dividing the page or the screen into two parts. The left-hand side is where you write the notes, and the right-hand side is designed for displaying the results. You can do it. You can display the results either in this form, okay? And this basically slides either left or right to either enlarge the results region or the text region, and it will do adjustment for if you have text written on the left-hand side, it will do adjustment. So basically, if I have, for example, let me come in here, and let's say that you wrote a lot of text like that. Let me just so let's say you wrote some text, and then you shrunk this. It will adjust the text so that the text is always completely visible. Okay, and it increases the size of the display, as I mentioned, of the results, or the size of the text, depending on what you want to do. Okay? This is one form of displaying the results. Those three buttons in there allow you to either select which form of displaying the results you want. Do you want the results to be separate on the right-hand side, or do you want the results to be in line with the text? Meaning, if I click on this, any code now that is there and I execute it, it will show the results under the code itself. Or if there is code in there and I execute it and I don't want to see the code itself, I can just click on this. Now it will only show me the results of the MATLAB code, and the code itself is hidden in the background. It is there and it's executing, but it's hidden. So this is basically what those three buttons do. Okay? So let me go in this option here, and let me just show you, for example, what are the capabilities of this live editor that you can use. So for example, let me say that this is the title. This is heading 1, heading 2, and heading 3. Okay, and I want to insert in here. What is it? And insert an image. So let me just go and insert what those are. Okay, so just inserted an image there. Okay, so all all types of images are supported. You can insert them there, and you can come to format the title just like you're in Word. But as I mentioned, the formatting is not as fancy as the formatting of a Word document. For example, you only have few heading types. You have heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. Okay, and you cannot change the format. Those are built in already with different sizes. So you have only a title and 3 headings and 3 heading levels, as well as the normal text. Okay, so let me just select, for example, this is heading 1. This is heading 2, and so on. Okay. You can insert equations. So if you wanted to insert equations, you can just come here and click on this, and it will either allow you to insert equations, as I mentioned, in LaTeX format. It will open LaTeX editor, where I'm not really an expert in LaTeX, so I know just the basics, how it works, but you can insert an equation there. It will show you how the equation will look like in here in the preview. I use it just a few times in here, because I usually use the other format of equation insertion. Yeah, but it will show you how the equation looks like there. And if you say OK there, it will insert that equation for you there. Yeah? But I usually, the form of equations that I insert is equation here. And then you can now type equations in here. X of t is equal, for example, to slash. This is also some form of LaTeX. Okay, so insert, for example, definite integral y of t, okay, dt, for example, and then you can select the limits. So basically everything that you can do in LaTeX, you can do it also here. Okay? Minus. Once you get used to this, it becomes quite easy to include the equations. So now I almost do it very quickly. I can insert equations very quickly. Okay? And the equations that you insert there can be quite complicated with matrices, with whatever you want. So I've done a lot of work where I can show you some of the results that I have put there. The equations are quite comprehensive and quite detailed. Okay? Now this looks just like a Word document. I haven't added any code. If you wanted to add code, all you have to do is just click in here, and it will just shade for you there a region in which you can add now MATLAB code. So for example, let me say clear, yeah, and let me say x is equal to rand normal, yeah, 100, for example. Yeah. So now I've written some MATLAB code. I want to execute it. All you have to do is just click on the executing on the. Let me see. Sorry, I didn't. Okay, let me say in here. Mesh X. Yeah, the code executed, but I didn't specify anything to show any results. So I'll just do a 3D plot of that X. So let me execute it now, and you see the result appearing on the right-hand side. I hope it doesn't embarrass me. I think it's still executing. By the way, yeah, okay. I developed everything on this computer, but this computer is a very old computer, so it's quite slow. And I transferred everything to the other computer, but unfortunately, the other computer is having difficulty with the Wi-Fi. Okay? So I decided just to use my computer here, my personal computer. The other computer is KFUPM's computer, but it's having Wi-Fi connectivity problems. So I'm gonna avoid using it. Okay, but as you see, this is basically how the live editor works. Now you can. The good thing about what's the difference between, for example, developing code in MATLAB using a script or using a live script? In the live script, you can always add text, insert a code, add other text, insert another code in here. So now I've inserted another region here for the text. I'm sorry, for the code. And let me say in here clear. Okay. So let me say y is equal to, for example, let's say t is equal to 0, 0.001 to 5. Y is equal to sine t. Okay. And plot t comma 1. So now if I execute this code, MATLAB will always assume that all code that exists in here is one unit, meaning even if it is divided into two parts, it's in fact the same code, as if this code, as if I have written it in here. Basically, this is what MATLAB will assume. Now, sometimes you want to write code that is kind of independent. For example, one piece of code that does something, another piece of code that does something else, and you don't want each time you execute, it executes all of the codes, because sometimes it might be a little bit slow. So the thing that you can do is you can always insert in here what they call a section break. So now, once you do this, MATLAB will understand that, or it will allow you to only execute the code that exists in this section, the section that is below, or you can execute the code that is in the above section. So now if I come here, by the way, you can always delete any results that you have there, clear output. Yeah. Now I can come in here and I can only execute, for example, the code that I have above, and it will only execute this. Or I can execute the code that I have below, and it will only execute this and not execute the upper part. Clearly, the code that you have below in here has to be, it has to be itself efficient, meaning I mean meaning all of the variables have been defined and so on. If I can always refer in here, for example, to the variable x if I want, yeah, because x is defined above. But if I want this code to run separately, I must make sure that all of the variables that I'm going to be using are defined in that part of the code. So now if I come in here, I can just say run the section, and it will only execute that part of the code. And as you see, it has done the plot. If I'm interested, for example, in executing all of the code that exists in the whole, let me just clear everything here, clear all output. If I'm interested in running everything, there is another button in here that says run, which will run for you all code that exists in this live script. Okay, so it has executed all parts of the code. What else do I want to show you? There are different ways of running the code. One of the things that I found to be very useful is they added a feature in this live code. Sometimes when you execute code that produces to you results that are in the form of different picture, different, let's say, something that appears to be a video, meaning in the sense that you're plotting something that changes with time. Okay? So you're plotting, for example, 1,000 different plots, one after the other, that takes, for example, 10 minutes or 20 minutes to execute. They added a feature in the live editor. Unfortunately, I think it's not available in this version of MATLAB. The version that I have in the other computer is a newer version, where when I executed some of the code that I had, which was producing to me some results that were kind of a lot of, I had some waveforms that were changing with time, and I was displaying the changing waveform versus time. I noticed that after it executed all of the code, it in fact created for me a video of that, which allows me, and I'll show you maybe this in a few minutes, you can just advance and go back in the results as you wish. Okay, so and you can even export that video as you can export the result of the simulation as a separate video that you can even send to your students if you want. I think it saves it as an MP4 video or so. Yeah. Let me just show you the capability of this. So let me just open one of the things that I've developed for that course that I'm going to be teaching. And this is, I think, the 5th or 6th lecture of the course. Okay. So this basically, let me just show you the lecture. Those are the four. This is how you equate, how complicated the equations can be. So any equation that you basically can write in LaTeX can be inserted there. And as you see there, it has all of the text in the form of something that looks like a textbook or so, with equations and codes and so on. And all of the results appear on the right. Okay. One of the things that I did not show you is you can also add interactivity to your code. So you can come, for example, to a specific variable in here. For example, one of my variables here is the noise standard deviation, which I set to be equal to a specific value. And then you can even add a slider. You can just come in here. Let me just show you. You can just set, for example, the noise standard deviation there to be equal to 1. And then you can tell it, I want you to add a control in there. And the control can be one of different types of controls. It can either be a numeric slider, meaning something that you can move left and right to change the value, or it's a drop down, meaning that whoever is accessing this live script can select from one of 5 items. The 5 items can be numbers, can be text, or whatever. It can be a checkbox, meaning, yes, I want to execute, for example, n is equal to 1 or n is equal to 0 or something like that. Or you can even add an edit field, meaning the user will put an input there manually. Yeah? So let me just use a numeric slider. Now it added a slider there for me, and you can just specify, for example, what is the minimum and what is the maximum value for that slider. So, for example, from 0 to 10, and the step size. And now, once you execute this, now moving the slider will basically change that variable. And you can set it such that each time you change the variable, it will automatically execute the code. And as you see now, unfortunately, as I mentioned, the computer is a little bit slow. So as I execute, as I change anything in the code, it immediately shows you what the result of the code now will be. And as you see there, it modified it, but because I moved it multiple times, so it executed the code and it's executing it again now. And if I change another slider there, it will execute the code again and again, okay? So this is basically how you can add some form of interactivity. What if, for example, you give this to students, and I'm planning to give those lecture notes to the students. I know that it's my work, and you can think of it as I own the copyright for that, but I don't mind, honestly. Even if the students benefit from that, that's fine. So I'm planning to give the students to the code to give those lecture notes to the students. I would recommend to the students that if they're not interested in the code, all they have to do is either, if they're interested in seeing the results as they're displayed here on the right, that's fine. Or if they click on this, it will show them the result under the code itself. Or if they're not interested in seeing the code itself, they can just click on this and it will hide the code. So now you see the text. And basically, maybe I need to add just a little bit of information there, what that code will do, so that if they hide the code, they understand what is going on, and they see only the items that have the controls appearing. So all they have to do is just move this, and it will basically execute the code based on the new values for the variables that they have changed. And as I mentioned, one of the items that I had there, I think it's not in this lecture note. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it or not, but hold on, just give me a minute. I think it's in this lecture note in here. Sorry, the computer is a little bit slow. So it was, let me stop the execution here. So let's open open. So for example, one of the items, one of the codes that I inserted there, it comes in the bottom in here, and this is a process called convolution. It's basically trying to find to explain to the students the concept of time varying channels. Okay, so in here, what the code will do is it will display. It will do. Let me just run it, and then I'll explain it to you as it runs. So now, when I run, you see basically Matlab is just give it a minute, okay? So it's quite slow. My apologies for that, but basically it's moving kind of a window over some channel and producing to you the results. So the whole execution of all of that takes maybe, according to this rate, I just tried it, by the way, a few minutes ago. It was taking about a minute to do the whole simulation. Now, based on this speed, it will probably take maybe 5 to 10 minutes, because I don't know, for some reason, it's quite slow. Maybe because of Zoom itself. maybe it's hugging the system or so. But after I execute all of this, it will show me in here a slider where I can advance or go back in the simulation very quickly. So basically, it converts the whole thing here into something that looks like a video, and I can even download that video and I can share it or put it on my send it to students if I want, or and so on. So this is basically, kind of in a nutshell, this is basically what the live editor and Matlab live script, what they can do. As I mentioned, I wouldn't recommend that, especially if you're interested in developing something. Just try it. You might like it and find that instead of using PowerPoint, for example, for developing lecture notes, this might be a good option for you, where you can, whenever you have any mathematical, let's say, demonstration that you want to show to students, this will be a good tool to use that instead of PowerPoint, which is quite static. So this basically concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any of your questions, or if you have any comments or complaints, or please feel free to let me know. Do you have any questions, gentlemen?
Assalamu alaikum. I have one.
Yes.
Can you hear me, Professor?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. This is Dr. Ahmed from CI department. That was very interesting and very useful. I got two questions. Let me ask you the first one. Can we scribble on it instead of typing the notes? Can we possibly use a stylus to write the notes and equations?
I don't think so.
Just
no.
for the first round of developing the notes?
I don't think so. No. Even the text editing is not as powerful as Word. I know that in Word you can scribble. You can, if you have a one of those stylus-based PCs and so on, you can add text. You can add your handwriting on the Word document and so on. But in here, no, it's quite limited in terms of text editing. It's not that powerful.
Yeah, you seem to have put a lot of efforts there. Really appreciate that. For the second part of my question comes to my experience in conducting a similar kind of lectures in one of the undergraduate courses. But I tried to do using the PC lab-based activity. And I was, in fact, I was quite surprised and rather shocked to hear the students complaining that, all I'm doing is teaching them I'm going through the Matlab. So my experience is probably very opposite to yours. So I thought interactive class would be, something which students would like. And my previous experience in Pakistan was exactly opposite. Students enjoyed them. And here I got this very strange feedback. And that too after the lectures were over.
Okay.
Any comments on that, please?
Well, my experience with the way that I've been developing lecture notes to students, honestly, as I mentioned, when I ask the students, do you like the lecture notes that I develop and the style that I use for the lecture notes? Honestly, well, without exaggeration, I remember that the first time I asked, and to my shock, I thought maybe 50% of the students would be interested in the lecture notes. I think out of 30, I think I had 28 or 29 students. One student said that he did not like the lecture notes. Okay, I know that the way that I was developing the lecture notes on Word, it gives it kind of that vibrant look. Word is a professional text editing tool. In here, it's not as nice or as fancy as Word, but I think that with the added features in here of the simulations, and by the way, so far in the course, I have at least added 40 or 50 different code snippets, okay? And all of them show different concepts of the course. So it makes it, I think, significantly better even than the Word document. My experience, honestly, is completely different from yours. I think the students that I've been teaching...
let me add something.
Sure.
No, this is something which, this is the last semester was the first semester at KFUPM. Probably I need to learn from, you guys. But would it not be better for them to run the code in real time rather than they just click the button and then they run the code. You know what I mean?
For the real time.
It means what I want. Would it not be better if they write the code themselves and then they experience the output rather than you giving them the ready-made in the plate?
Yes and no. Yes, if the purpose of the course was to do the simulations, yes. But this is a course that is not about simulations, honestly. The course is highly mathematical course where I explain the mathematical concepts, okay, and how different types of modulations are done, how different types of digital modulations perform, and so on. Okay, so the code is only for illustrations. It's not for them to develop. I don't expect them even to be capable to develop most of the codes that are there. Yeah, there are some probably. If I'm gonna ask the students to develop the code, I'll probably ask them throughout the semester maybe to develop 1 or 2 items. But develop all of the work that I've been doing in here, it's going to be impossible for them, and I don't think any of them would be interested in doing that because it's going to waste a lot of time. It's taking a lot of time, honestly, to develop this code. Sometimes I spend, for some simple codes, it might take me 20 minutes, 10 minutes or so. But for complicated codes, honestly, it sometimes takes maybe 3-4 hours. There are some parts there that took me about 3 to 4 hours. So I wouldn't think that it would be logical for me to ask the students to develop this code. They will not do it because it's not part of the course.
Thank you. I think that was very comprehensive. Probably I need to adopt some of your techniques to suit my needs, but that was very useful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Said?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Wajid. Thank you very much for this enlightenment. But just wonder, can we lock the file for the student not to modify?
Unfortunately not. I was hoping for a way where I can hide the code, for example. Meaning give them only the text and the code in the background where they can execute it with. I couldn't find a way for doing it. So I to the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay. Can we use this platform as an object inside Word and then run it from the Word? Is that possible?
And I don't think so, because Word is really good. Let's say it works well with other Microsoft products. So you can, for example, import a table from Excel, put it in Word. You can take a Word document and put it maybe in some other in PowerPoint. But Matlab and Word are two completely different systems, and honestly I don't know, but I haven't tried it and it never crossed my mind. But I'm guessing that no, I don't think you'll be able to. Meaning this, I'll just show you. If I just copy this and put it into Word, it will just in fact show you the text. The text will appear there. Sorry, what did I select? I think I only selected the.
Did you try to insert the M file as an object or something, or it can't?
No, I did not. I did not. I don't think you can do that. If I click on insert in here, I doubt very much. Well, honestly, I did not try it. Where is it?
But so far so good. I think it's really a powerful tool. Yeah. It's an excellent platform for interactive lectures. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much for that.
I agree with you. I agree with you. So, any other questions or comments, gentlemen? So I'm not asking you, or I'm not recommending to you that you, if you like this idea, to do it for your whole course, but maybe find a topic there that you always struggled, for example, in explaining, and develop it using this, and you can use it to teach in the classroom with all of the equations and graphics and so on. I think this would be a very applicable way of teaching in the classroom. Some of the lecture notes that I've developed in there have a lot of text. Yeah? Most of the time when I teach using the lecture notes, the Word document, for example, or so, I don't go and read the text. Okay? I go over the graphics or write notes above or below the graphics. And whenever I see a piece of graphic there, I just explain it. And then when I give the lecture note to the students, and they read the lecture note as if someone else is repeating more or less what I've just explained to them in the class. So don't expect me in the classroom to go and read all of that text. Yeah? I'll just look at the graphics or the headings of the different paragraphs there or so, and just explain using my own words and the graphics that exist in the lecture notes. Dr. Wasfi?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Jazakumullahu khair for the presentation. And it seems I got the answer to my question, but you still have the two modes. Yeah, you still have the Word lecture notes and the Matlab Live, right?
For this course, for example, I started by Word. I started writing the lecture notes on Word. But the problem is that Word, the equations on Word are completely different. I figured out that if I develop the lecture notes on Word and then try to copy, yes, I'll copy the text, but then I'll have to develop the whole equations again. Yeah. A lot of the figures in here, I had them using, I developed them using a program called Visio. Yeah. And Visio is very compatible with Word. So I can develop something on Visio, take it to Word, and then if I want to edit it, I just double click on it in Word. I'll be able to edit it, move a block, for example, or change the text. In here, it does not accept Visio. So I have to go to the Visio, do a screen capture, and then come in here and paste it. Yeah? So I decided not to do the two because this will be kind of double the work. So I decided to do all of the work now on Matlab, and I don't have the Word documents that correspond to this.
Okay, great. So this means that you gave up on, not you gave up, but you stopped using Word, and now the students only get the Matlab Live. So Matlab Live, yani, as a tool, it can be sufficient on its own. You don't have to use anything else.
Yes.
So, Jazakumullah khair. Jazakumullah.
Any other questions? I think someone.
Just a last. I can't find the hands up. Sorry. This thing.
No
this
problem. Speak up.
Sorry about this. So you have done away with the PowerPoint altogether?
I never used. In fact, in my teaching, I almost never used PowerPoint.
Oh, lovely.
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you my personal perspective. I remember that when I was a student, up to the PhD, okay, very often the instructor would give us the PowerPoint presentation. And yeah, during, let's say, immediately after the class, the PowerPoint presentation makes complete sense and you understand everything in the PowerPoint presentation. But once you leave that PowerPoint presentation for a while and come back to it, you start wondering, the instructor said something about this equation, but you couldn't figure out what it was. So this is why I went from the beginning with the lecture notes that are in Word format, because whenever I develop any lecture notes, I develop them as if I'm explaining the concepts to students. So whatever ideas come to my mind, I'll just spell them in the lecture notes. Maybe this is not ideal, and I know that many of you think that this means that the student has to read a lot. But trust me, once you develop something, I think that is concise and to the point, students love it because they understand that if we read this, we'll get 90% of the. I'm not saying that my exams, for example, are only from the lecture notes. I tell the students that the material that you're responsible for is in the lecture note, but don't expect that the exams will come only from the exercises in the lecture notes. The lecture notes are just to give you the main concepts. You're responsible now to go and investigate more. Generally, they understand that this means don't read the book because the book is going to give you maybe a little bit more, but it's going to require significantly more time to cover the book. But the point that I'm trying to make is I try to make the lecture notes as concise and as to the point as possible, yeah? So that the standard student, by reading the lecture notes, will be able to, maybe by reading the lecture notes and understanding everything there, will probably be able to get in here. So it's like a compromise, but I don't like PowerPoint. That's all.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions, Uthman? Or by the way, my apologies. Each time I give one of those learn a skill in 30 minutes, I find that I need more than 30 minutes. So my apologies. I promised you at the beginning that will only take 30 minutes or 35 minutes, but now we've already taken 50 minutes. So if you don't have any comments or any questions, I think that will be it. And thank you so much for attending this session. And I hope that you got something from it. I hope that maybe you'll find, some of you at least will find that this is a useful tool, and you'll try it and get hooked with it. Honestly, I loved it. Once I used it, I really liked it. As I mentioned, the only problem is if you read the text there, a lot of it probably will contain some spelling mistakes. So please accept my apologies for that. So I think I'll see you inshallah in another event. Have a good day.